Hello. I was really hoping that things wouldn't come to this point, but it appears things have. So here we are. There is someone in the YouShip/self-ship community that goes by Milky_Chew. This person used to be Pickles Chan 12. They were called out for grooming, flirting with people out of their age range, and showing fetish gore to minors, so they ran off and rebranded. I am making this video to tell everyone that I am one of her victims. Not only is she groomer, but she continues to carry these behaviors. And instead of taking accountability, they run. I have never made a video like this before, so I want to apologize if I ever come across as unprofessional. I will do my best not to. Sorry for using text-to-speech for something like this. I cannot properly read this, and I wanted to get this video out as soon as I could. This video will not be containing everything. I shortened and cut down a lot due to the time restraint and length of the document. I do heavily suggest everyone watching this read this document if you haven't already. Before I go into the doc, I want to make something very clear. We, as the victims, do not condone harassment of Pickles, do not harass, dox, send harm towards, or interact with Pickles in any way. Just block them. We do not want harm sent. This video is for awareness purposes only. Trigger warning for drawn gore, grow art, endangerment of minors, sexual assault, manipulation, grooming plus more. Flirting with younger people. I will be starting with what is the worst thing out of all of this. When Milky was under the alias of Pickles_Chan, she had flirted with several people that were younger than her. This ranged from people ages 17 to 19. There were two 17-year-olds that we know of, one person who was freshly 18 and one person who was 19. Starting with the first 17-year-old, who I will call Fish. Fish and Pickles were very close mutuals, but it didn't take long for Pickles to start to joke around with Fish. Fish had his age in his bio, so Pickles was very aware of him being 17. It started with Pickles stating she would buy a body pillow of the 17-year-old. Yes, body pillows aren't always sexual, but considering other factors it is not a stretch to come to this conclusion. People would tell Pickles that it was weird and wrong to say, and instead of handling the situation herself, Pickles instead ran to the 17-year-old and asked him to make a post to defend her. This body pillow post was not the only time they did something like this to Fish. Even in DMS and other posts, there were certain images and GIFs that have certain contexts. Pickles was 21 to 22 during this time. The second 17-year-old was someone Pickles started talking to for commissions. And the way Pickles spoke to them is not a way an artist should speak to a client they just started talking to. Pickles started saying I love you and jokingly accused the person of cheating when they typed I love you to. Pickles was 22 at this time, and the client's age was in their bio. Pickles was aware that this person was a minor as well. Jokes or not, they were not appropriate. Third, I will now be talking about Lightbulb. Lightbulb and Pickles met through Law of Talos, and the two shared original characters with each other. Pickles fell in love with Lightbulb's character Solon, and immediately started being greatly inappropriate. This behavior for Solon, and later Lightbulb's other character Dennis, quickly became charged to Lightbulb herself. Pickles would often call them her wife and being very sexual to them. Talking about how they took her virginity and was wiggling into their pants unprompted. Pickles was aware they were 18, but not freshly 18. Regardless, 18 and 21 to 22 is a pretty large gap. Pickles is the adult, and should have known better/checked ages before doing these jokes. Lastly, they made a passing joke to someone who was 19. There was only one instance that we know of, but considering the other victims it is important to bring up. Pickles is still engaging in inappropriate behaviors around minors as recently as 2025. Playing Monster Seeking Monster on Jackbox with a 16-year-old who I will call Band-Aid. Remember Band-Aid. They are important for later. Monster Seeking Monster is a romantic game you can play on Jackbox where the players try to set up dates between each other through secret messages. Pickles claims to be changing, but she has not. Robotural medical gore. I will now be talking about Robot's experience. Robot met Pickles in August of 2024, and they were amazed that they got to know her personally. By this time, Pickles had made a relatively large name for herself in both the Law of Talos and YouShip communities Robot was a part of. Robot considered Pickles a guide to YouShip, looking to Pickles for guidance due to still being new to it. Robot put their trust in her since Pickles had been YouShipping for longer than they have. Pickles took advantage of Robot's kindness and began to use them to push their fetishes onto. Robot first met Pickles in a Castle of Nations server. Around this time, Robot was getting into the fandom more and more. They wanted to become friends with Pickle due to seeing how active they were in the Castle of Nations server. Pickles would talk about their ship a lot in this server, often showing art of the ship. The issue is what the art contained. The art Pickles would send in the general chat contained censored fetish gore in one image and mild and censored gore in another. Pickles also posted an SFW joke about Ivan getting pegged in the server, a server containing minors. This image was also posted to her public Twitter despite having an SFW account. Pickles had a server called the Back Alley. This server was made for her new Twitter fanbase. This server contained a gore channel. There was no verification for this section in the server, a simple reaction to a message and you were in. This does not count as consent. Minors cannot consent. In this gore section, Pickles would post a gif of a real heart that was kept beating synthetically. She did not spoil this or censor this gif until Robot told her off regarding it, in which she just deleted the post and later, due to a Twitter call-out, the entire gore channel. This wasn't the first time Pickles sent real gore either. In her personal server called The Hot Spring, she sent a video that contained Earl guts. It was definitely a shock video too, as the starting frame appears to be normal. Now we're heading to January 2025, the breaking point that brought Pickles down. In a channel Pickles had in the back alley called Haters Air, she was venting about her getting a first hate gimmick of the year about her being an amputation fetishizer. She would eventually spiral out of control with her doing self-harm and immediately destroying evidence of her wrongdoings, and even went as far as to send out a rush dot that only explains a sliver of her actions and not the rest she did during 2024. The next day, after she did all of that, a burner would pop up that only showcased Pickles' gore fetish. Pickles would announce deleting tweets and evidence, then leaving the account to her friend Seed and another person until she gets mentally stable again. After this, she would attempt to revamp her server and image by archiving the server and privating her straw pages. This would lead to Pickles also giving Seed ownership to the server, which caused them to delete channels out of immense stress and feeling the need to do so to keep Pickles from hurting themselves. For some reason, she brought Robot up at Seed for starting this, despite Robot having zero idea what was happening at the time. The worst part is that Robot was 16 during all of this January 2025. Pickles, a grown adult, was accusing a 16-year-old of being the one to call her out for the fetish thread. Robot even had to go through a account that posted dark content, even though Robot wasn't comfortable with that content, and send it to Pickles to make her feel validated since she was complaining about people not respecting her as a dead dove person. My experience. I will now be talking about my story. My experience, how we met, and how Pickles has groomed me. I originally met Pickles on TikTok, finding her through her coddle content. I would comment, like, overall show support. I eventually made a Twitter account and found out Pickles was on Twitter too. My support only grew, as I made 2 separate original characters for Pickles characters and alternate universes, one of which she drew. Eventually, Pickles made a post talking about how she was planning on making a server, and I mentioned that I would love to join. This led to Pickles private messaging me herself with a link to the hot spring. In the hot spring, Pickles was a lot more unfiltered. Almost immediately, she would start talking about male pregnancy, how she wanted to see characters she was attracted to, naked, gore, amputation, and more. Despite me stating in my intro that I was uncomfortable with NSFW/dirty content, Pickles assured me that NSFW was not allowed, only to jump into making these jokes immediately. Later, in March of 2024, Pickles had been told I was a minor in VC, which led to her breaking down in DMS to me. This would be a consistent thing she would do, basically beginning to put me in Circle's shoes. I would check in on Pickles a lot, asking if she was okay, making sure she knew I cared. Pickles would vent to me a lot, vent about jealousy, how she wanted to kill/hurt herself, and more. This put me into a situation where I felt I had to be there for her, even if I myself was busy. It didn't take long for Pickles to start talking about gore, amputation, and her other fetishes with me. I was added into her dark chat channel by her personally, so I was stuck with the role unless I asked her to remove it. But I was in a situation where if I did, she would freak out and assume I hated her or thought she was weird, immediately jumping to self-harm. This dark chat included Pickles' fantasies of wanting to be put in graphic situations, usually involving her amputating herself or Ivan. If it didn't involve gore, it involved sexual assault. Pickles had made it clear they were very unstable very early in the hot spring, which is something I took note of. I took it to heart. I was greatly worried for her since we had gotten closer. I started calling her my sister, and I told her I saw her as such. Pickles was aware of how I looked up to her. Pickles would often talk about wanting to amputate or abuse characters completely unprompted, not even keeping it in the gore or dark art channel. I had made it clear I wasn't in the gore channel for a reason, as I am deeply unsettled/uncomfortable with gore. However, this didn't deter Pickles. I would even express it as she was actively doing it, but they brushed me off with the "I seriously love abusing him." Looking back, it is very clear she has a fetish for this. At one point, I made a YouTube edit for Pickles to the song Hot to Go. It was cute, simple, fluff if you will. Pickles then asked for more edits, and I said I was more than happy to do more and I just needed songs. Pickles then asked for a gore edit and asked for the song to be the intro to Dokuro-chan, a very pedophilic/lowly anime. This was laid into me knowing her, so I knew if I were to state I was uncomfortable with that request she would spiral. Pickles could not handle being told no, or she was making people uncomfortable. Her brain registers it as hate and they jump to the thought of self-harm. I agreed to it, but I was deeply uncomfortable with it. So much so that I deleted it from my editing app and camera roll after making it. Pickles, however, gushed about how much she loved it, which made me feel special and happy knowing it made her happy. Knowing her love for gore made me indulge in it when I was making things for her, forcing myself to draw it as a gift for her when she was coming out of the mental hospital. Pickles groomed me. There's no other way to say it. I was a minor. Pickles was an adult that had power over me and knew they had that power. They pushed gore onto me and made me her therapist. Pickles' fragile mental state made me afraid to focus on work or school or even shower in fear she would need me. At the time, Pickles and those in the hot spring were my only friends other than about 5 other people. I was very isolated when I met Pickles, so the thought of losing someone to suicide deeply scared me. Which is why I never told her I wasn't okay/able to comfort her. Here are all she screenshots for this. Again, this doesn't hold everything. I deeply advise that you read the dot linked below, but I do want to make it clear that despite nothing romantic happening, I was groomed. I am stressing this point because Pickles will always claim she didn't groom anyone since nothing romantic happened. But there are different ways to groom people. It isn't always romantic. Milky_Chew is a groomer. Minor endangerment robot and I were not the only minors hurt by Pickles. Pickles had minors in her audience, which she was aware of, yet would often post very graphic gore or repost medical gore which she has since and reposted due to her own fetishes, even guiding one minor to an NSFW artist by giving them the artist's username. Pickles had a general lack of care to filter herself or consider the minors in and around her spaces. This led to several getting hurt, possibly even some we do not even know about. This includes letting her fetishes take over completely normal conversations, which she did in 2025 as well. Pickles would also talk about weed, or being under the influence of alcohol around minors. In the server she made in 2025, the Abyssal Lounge, there was an entire section dedicated to it. There was no verification to get into the weed section. A simple "Are you an adult or minor?" question, and a "Would you want access to the weed section?" question in the verification bot. But Pickles took no effort to make sure that those people were really adults. One of the people in the server will be called Band-Aid. Band-Aid was the same minor involved in the monster-seeking monster incident. Band-Aid was a moderator of this new server. This meant Band-Aid was allowed to see the weed section of this server. Pickles also talked about her doing weed in the past, both around me and Robot. Pickles also tried to force this onto other people, talking about drawing the 3 of their personas high. When the other 2 asked not to be drawn that way, Pickles literally told them to bad. Pickles would also not properly monitor anything she ran or sent. This led to her sending an SFW in the hot spring, and led to a light bulb and a different minor seeing the picture. Pickles would also be very suggestive/post suggestive pieces without much warning, or would push to post them on her public account rather than her NSFW one. Conclusion: I tried to keep this video short. This is far from having everything. Like stated before, I cut out a lot and focused on how she caused harm to minors, how she groomed and caused definite trauma to these people, many of them still healing. I heavily implore everyone watching to read and share the document, as it has a lot more information. This video is made strictly for awareness, to warn people about her actions. Pickles lies and runs from this, or shifts blame, overall doesn't take accountability. The fact that the behaviors she promised to change continued into late 2025 tells us everything.